Welcome to the Public Sector Marketing Show, a podcast for government and public sector marketing professionals who want to level up their digital marketing and social media knowledge, skills, and strategic thinking. And now, welcome your host, Joanne Sweeney.
Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Public Sector Marketing Show. Culture eats strategy for lunch. They're the words of educator and author Mr. Peter Drucker. And what does it mean when it comes to moving from traditional comms to wholly agile comms in public sector? Where do the tensions arise and how do you overcome it? It means that your strategy transformation might slow down, and in some cases it might unravel if you have a lot of detractors. So coming up in this show, I'll share my thoughts on why culture is critical to digital success, the 7S approach to embedding a culture of digital comms in your government or public sector organisation. And I interview Charlie Boyle, CEO of Customer Service Excellence Ireland. And this man specialises in this field. And you have to stay tuned for that conversation because, trust me, it's epic. In today's column, I'm talking about why culture is critical to digital comms success. I can write your social media or your digital marketing strategy. I can even develop a bespoke training program for your staff and to scale digital skills right around your organization. I can even develop your content and publish it if you want me to. But really, when it comes to successful digital marketing, social media, web marketing, email marketing, content marketing in government and public sector, it needs to start with a mindset that digital comms is important, that it's going to be prioritized, and a culture that you're willing to embrace that transformation, that change, and to embrace the challenges, and you're willing to shed old work practices in favor of new ones. And that really, for me, when I work with organizations and I see buy-in, even if people are afraid of change, but if they're bought into the need for change, then we have a great strategy. And I often find that implementation is more successful. But what happens if there isn't a shared vision for digital comms in an organization? And quite simply, strategies are there, perhaps just tick boxes to say that we have a social media strategy or a digital comms strategy. And this is where the real problems arise. Because if you're not invested in digital comms and appreciate the value that it's going to give to your organization's overall corporate communications and reputation strategy, then really you're not going to be successful, because if you don't believe it, then the public are going to believe it. So culture matters because you get a team that is invested in digital comms wholly. They understand the value of it, and especially from where the citizen comes in. They appreciate the changing nature of the landscape and that it's not a static situation, that it's ever moving, ever changing, and that you have to pivot every time you think that you've mastered something in the online world, something else changes. But of course, that keeps us busy and on our toes. You will also have a team that is willing to learn, that is willing to recognize that these vocational and practical skills of digital communications need to be updated on an ongoing basis, and really thinking about it from a CPD or a continuing professional development perspective. Accepting that it will feel uncomfortable and that you'll be going into a place where maybe it's new to you, and then that brings up feelings of fear. But also being supportive of colleagues who are maybe embracing digital for the very first time. And I see a lot of this. And the trend that I'm seeing right now is that more and more students are choosing to study with us at Public Sector Marketing Institute because they don't have communications, marketing, media in their job title. However, they recognize that to be successful and to drive forward their objectives and their projects and their teams, they need to be skilled digital communicators, and they need to be able to engage with the public in public platforms and also with other stakeholders. And so a lot of those students are coming in from a place of fear, uncertainty, and probably thinking that they won't get to the end of one of our courses. But of course, we're there to mentor and to support them. And when they do get to the end, because I never leave anyone unaided, there's a real sense of empowerment and a real sense of, well, now I feel relevant in the digital age, that I can communicate online. And then finally, what I would say is teams with a great culture and mindset towards digital comms are willing to get it wrong. Because anyone who works in the field that I do knows that in order to get it right online, you first have to get it wrong. And I don't like using that word wrong. What I mean is you need to take action in order to learn. And from the results of that action, you will be able to lean into the data insights to understand whether that tactic, that strategy, that piece of content actually performed well or engaged an audience. And if it didn't, then that's where the real learning comes from. So ask yourself, what is the culture in our organization when it comes to progressive digital communications?
Level up your digital skills by taking our diploma in digital marketing, plus gain an industry qualification. Use the code digitalmarketing20 for a 20% discount.
Visit publicsectormarketingpros.com.
In today's consulting section, I'm going to talk about the 7S approach to embedding a culture of digital communications transformation in your public sector organization. Change is challenging. Digital communications transformation is not easy, but trust me, it is worth it. So here's a little framework that is widely used in the industry that you can apply to digital comms change within your organization. The 7S approach starts with shared values. Strategy doesn't come first. Shared values is top of the pecking order. So we all need to get into a room, whether it's hybrid, virtual, or in person, and we need to really ask ourselves, why is digital communications important for our organization now? Is it going to help us manage our reputation? Is it the expectation from the public's perspective that we are there on platforms where they are navigating? Is it part of that transformation piece where the S3 age is evolving? So really having a sense for shared values, and this should not start and stop with the communications team. It needs to involve all departments. It needs to be led by the CEO's office, by heads of directorates, head of departments, and then bringing in all staff to really understand the why of digital comms before you even talk about the how. So the second S in the 7S approach is strategy. And this is really mapping out the roadmap of where you are going to go over a specific time frame, 12, 18, 24 months. And it's also going to be hung on the priorities, goals, objectives, KPIs of your organization. Strategy should also give great consideration to all of those departments and also to all of the audiences that you are serving. Within that strategy, you'll also think about the content, the pillar messaging, and you'll also think about the channels that you're going to embrace in order to reach the public. There should be a measurement framework. There should also be an implementation plan built into it. Then from implementation, you're going to get to the third S, which is systems. A systematic approach to digital comms is one that works very well. And in actual fact, what I would argue is that the systematic approach now in the digital age is far more effective and efficient than traditional old comms work practices. And so we're really gearing up for efficiency. We're talking about working smarter and not harder, but without cutting those corners. Next, we need to talk about structure as the fourth S. How are we going to structure our teams? In fact, do we have enough skills and capacity within our current team to deliver the strategy within that shared value that we have? Are we going to restructure our teams, considering that digital comms is everyone's responsibility and not simply the press, media, or the marketing or the communications team? Moving then to number 5 is all about staff and really empowering them with confidence and also communicating really well what's expected of them now. Because within transformation, you will be ditching old practices, introducing new ones. There'll be new ways of working expected from staff, but you cannot assume. You need to mentor them, train them, and really empower them to really get comfortable and familiar with new ways of working. The 6th S is skills, and the skills set is kind of the easy one because, I teach people every single day of the week, and you can teach people digital comms skills even if they've never had a communications role in their life. These skills are ubiquitous, and in fact, in 5-10 years, I might not even be doing this job of teaching people these tangible, vocational, practical skills. So it's just a little bit of transformation that needs to happen. And of course, CPD skills are vital. And then the 7th S is style. You could also call it substance. You could also call it your tone of voice, your personality online. And it's how you're going to deliver the personality of the organization and the people within it. And it's really important in the digital age that we see human faces, because that human connection and that person-to-person engagement is really important. The years of hiding behind a corporate logo are definitely gone. So have a look a little bit more closely at the 7S approach and see how you can apply it to your organization.
A one-stop shop digital marketing and social media resource. Join our membership academy for 12 months. Access a library of how-to videos, template strategies, and organizational policies. Monthly live coaching. Attend webinars with subject matter experts. Meet and network with public sector pros from across the world. Use the code MEMBERSHIP20 for a 20% discount.
Visit publicsectormarketingpros.com.
In this episode, we hear from customer experience expert Charlie Boyle, a fellow Donegal native. Charlie has a wealth of information on all things customer experience. He is the CEO of Customer Service Excellence Ireland, which he founded in 2014. For the previous 14 years, Charlie worked on various operational projects in the UK, including several successful pub groups, the Marriott Hotel Group, Chelsea Football Club, and the London Olympic Games. He holds a Master's in Leadership and Innovation and studied consumer behaviour at Ulster University. All of his studies are focused on customer experience, and this is one of my favourite podcast interviews to date. So sit back and enjoy. Charlie, you are very welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you indeed, Joanne. Thanks for the invitation to be on here.
So there's a saying that goes, culture eats strategy, and I spend much of my time writing social media and digital marketing strategies for my clients in government and public sector. But do you think that strategy will fail if the people and the culture are misaligned?
Not always. There as always, there are outliers, and there are those that will storm on and succeed regardless of whether they get the culture right. However, they are the exception rather than the rule, and to use that as a strategy, to use that sort of hope to work without positive culture as a strategy wouldn't be good strategy in the first place. So I'm a strong believer in that statement by Drucker. Somebody went on to add that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that it's that important. And yeah, I would believe passionately in that from life experience as well, Joanne. Yeah.
So how do you shift culture and mindsets, when people are digitally averse? And in my experience, that usually comes from a nervousness. So how can you kind of get people to shift? Because this is your area of specialism.
Yeah, with difficulty, but with the understanding that without change, disrupt or be disrupted, change or die. All of that is very, very relevant in the digitally disruptive world that we are now in. And companies or businesses or individuals who don't change with this fast moving. I mean, we're moving faster now in 3-year periods than we did in 30-year periods 30 years ago. And I know that sounds like a bit of a head full, but it just means that every 3 years, the world is evolving at such a pace that we have to change. There's no longer the option of not changing. And, be that in the workplace or be it in sport or in the local community, change is a given now. So therefore, my argument is that we must focus on change and the processes and the mindset and the ability and the adaptability to change as much as we must on what is it we have to change. It seems to me that it's easier to figure out what has to be changed than it is to change. And bringing everybody with you on any journey is an impossibility, but you're probably working off sometimes the 10-80-10 rule, where 10% of people will cheerlead the change on, 80% are passive. They'll go with the flow. They won't do any harm. They won't pull back against it. They'll just be passive participants. But 10% of people, again, the research will show this, 10% of people will pull back against change. Now, that's an average, but you can imagine an organization where that's not aligned at 10-80-10. Let's say it's 5% cheerleaders and maybe 80% passives, and you've got 15% pulling against it. That can be very, very powerful. And it doesn't mean that you eradicate or get rid of the 10 or 15%. You need them. Minority thinking is important. Minority thinking improves all thinking by 30%, I think is the statistic there. So it's important to listen to those who are slower to change, because there's lessons in there as well. There's our ability to change and our need to change is important, but it's also important to listen to those who perhaps resist change or don't want to change, because within that group, there are messages as well, which we need to heed.
And so when you're in a room or a virtual room with people and you're helping them with some sort of transformation project, how do you manage that dynamic of championing change, passive, and then resisting change?
By being totally and absolutely honest about it, by calling it as it is, and putting up a slide that displays that. Don't beat about the bush. Don't because people know what category they fall into, and you will soon know, and others in the room will also know. So why, with such an important thing as change, should we tiptoe around it? That doesn't mean you go in like a bull into a china shop, but you simply deal with the data. The data is there. That's what the stats would say. That's what the research is suggesting, that you're going to get resistors to change. People will resist it in different ways. People will just not be happy with it because they might be a year or 2 years or 3 years away from retiring. And the last thing they want to be doing is any big change project before they do so. However, that being said, and I've seen this as well, is that those who say they are open to change can sometimes fall into the category when the action starts. So they can fall into that sort of, oh, well, yeah, it sounded good, but I'm not so sure about that. Those that are the early resistors to change can become the champions of the change as well. So to answer your question, I think you need to lead with honesty, total and absolute honesty. And, in my case, one of the things, change is important for customer service and customer experience, because as you know, and we've spoken about this before, my belief is that starts deep down. Customer service starts internally. It's the culture, it's the internal customer service. So typically we would get a call from a company that would say, will you come in and do some work on our frontline staff? We've had a few complaints, blah, blah, blah. And the question might be early on, well, how do you know it's the frontline staff? Perhaps the issue is much deeper in the organization. And, those companies and organizations who are, grown up enough to say, okay, that's interesting, well, come on and have a look at it. What the first slide that I will start with is that one that I'm talking about now, is the 10-80-10, where, we call them canaries as birds in the workplace. They will cheerlead it on. They become very energetic about it. And, it's a very, very dynamic part that you need. But you must also be aware of the resistors to change. You must also be aware in that category as well, that there will be cultural assassins. There will be people who will deliberately and consciously try to pull it back. But you need to name it as it is. There's no point in wasting the company's money and waiting for sessions for people to come out and waiting for them to come back at you, because change is based on fear. And fear is based on two things in the workplace: the fear of losing something we have or not getting something that we want. So again, getting clear to the causes of the resistance to change, and just naming it, people become more comfortable with it. They become either more comfortable with knowing, oh, okay, I'm aware, I'm aware of where I am now, and then you can start working on it. And the people who are the resistors, we can rename them. We can call them challengers. It's all about the naming. And it's not about the personalities, it's always about the principles. We work on the principles of what we're trying to do, and leave the personalities out of it. I just find that it works much, much better like that.
And so when it comes to customer experience, and let's say for argument's sake, we have mastered it internally within our organization, and then we step out onto the public digital world where you really are exposed. What role does customer experience play in the digital age? Let's think about your websites, social media, email, for example.
Yeah, or we could look at that the other way around. What part does digital play in the customer experience? It's intertwined. There's no question about this. It's intertwined. It's not one or the other. It's both working together. The digital is of huge importance to the overall customer experience, and I come across it constantly every day, where there's really, really good examples of the digital supporting the overall customer experience. Remember, if it was in retail or hospitality, that experience no longer starts when you enter the bricks and mortar store. It starts well in advance of that. The experience has started 2 days beforehand. When I pick up the phone and sitting on my couch and I start, looking at, what store. I'm not a big shopper, I must admit, but if I'm looking at what shop, I'm looking at the opening times, I'm looking, do they have the product that I'm looking for? I'm reading about the product, so I'm going to know more about the product when I go on. Then the person I'm asking the question of, and that's a big shift in retail, hospitality. The same, when we're booking hotels, it's a digital process. I'm going to go on to one of the booking sites, or to be fair to the hotel, I'm going to go straight to their site, so maybe they don't have to pay a commission. But the journey has already started. The customer experience journey has already started. Then the quality of the website, subconsciously and consciously, I am starting the journey of whether this brand is a fit for me or not, and it seldom comes down to price. I'm then looking at reviews, so there's going to be TripAdvisor reviews. So the digital journey is intertwined in the customer experience, and then have they overpromised and under-delivered, or is it the other way around? Is there a nice subtle sort of welcome to this hotel, and when I get there, is then the human touch, the human factor, is that enhancing what was already that digital interaction with the brand? And I know I'm just sticking with hospitality and retail, but that could be in any sector, so it's of huge importance.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Even how public sector and government agencies have transitioned throughout COVID, they had to bring access to all their public services online. And you're right, the journey starts well before you even engage with a human being, because the expectation is that all the information that I could possibly need exists online. Now, that we're very well connected, not only our Donegal connection and our business connection and our shared interests, but also on LinkedIn. And I love connecting with you on LinkedIn, and you always put out things that make me think, and I know that's the whole objective. But one recently caught my attention, and it posed the question of human skills versus digital skills. And so I wanted to ask you, are you advocating for more humanity online, or a more human approach to digital conversations? Or what was that prompt that you were getting us to think about?
Well, as we would say in Donegal, I'm acting the blackguard, to be very honest, Joanne. And it's not, I know what I'm doing when I put up human skills versus digital skills. I don't believe that. I'm putting it up. It's a blog. Remember what a blog is. There's a bit of entertainment in it. It's human skills and digital skills. Of course it is. It's not one versus the other. It's both intertwined. They have to be, they are. However, here is the anomaly. We are one of the best in Europe at training our young people digitally. So we're really, really good in education at digital skills. I think we're 1 or 2 in Europe. we're about 23rd in Europe at human skills. We do not have content in our education system for human skills. If my son's doing civil engineering at third level, bright young lad, great lad, 95 to 100% of that is about civil engineering. So it's going to be about CAD, it's going to be about physics. And you might say, yeah, well, that's the way it should be. It should not be. What's preparing him for the first day in the building site in London or New York? Where are the human skills? And we're not talking about human skills. We need to understand what human skills are and what they're not. We think human skills as being friendly and kind. They are human skills. But what about creative thinking? What about adaptability? What about resilience? What about these human skills that maybe our generations before were exposed to, but the younger generations, because we've set it up as such, they're not exposed to the same as that. So it has to be trained in. So the blogs that I put up and the surveys that I put up are asking the question, how important are human skills? Now, I put one up last night for the car industry, and product knowledge, which is knowledge about the car, is scoring at about 30%. Yet people in the car industry are saying 70% of the skills they need are human skills. Now, there is no question, if I ask the second part of that question to those involved in the motor industry, what level of training do you have at product knowledge of the car, the Volkswagen you're selling or the Mercedes? They will say 80% of the training is product knowledge. How much human skills training are you getting? It would be 5%. So there's a total and absolute anomaly in that whole balance. And, I'm very interested in the last couple of years in future skills required in various sectors. And, I've been involved in one or two of those on a national level. And it's there in front of us. It's there in front of us that the human skills, the need for human skills, we were calling them soft skills up to a few years ago, and therefore they weren't getting the seriousness that they required. Then we were sort of calling them employability skills as if it was getting somebody back to work. But there are human skills. There are human skills. And if we listed them, we could find up to 150. We had an exercise yesterday with credit unions. We narrowed it to 30. We tried to narrow it to 10 and we failed because you can't narrow it down past 30. So it's things like empathy, self-awareness, growth mindset, adaptability, innovation, collaboration. These things are of huge importance. But the interesting thing is they feed in to digital advance as well. If you're going to improve things digitally, you must have the ability to collaborate and to adapt and to sit down with other people and understand how teams work best. You must be able to communicate. You must have empathy. The first part of any design thinking is empathy. In other words, listen to the problem. Now, if we're not training in empathy in this digitally disruptive world, what's going to happen in a few years' time is all of us, not just the generation alpha that's coming up next, but all of us will lose the skill of communication, will lose these human skills that are so important for innovation. And innovation has never been as important, but there's a lot of skills that feed into innovation. There's a lot of skills that feed into critical thinking. So human skills aren't separate from the support of digital skills. They're intertwined, and likewise with digital skills.
Let's shift gear a little bit, and we're going into the future. And you, I know, would have watched, like I, the announcement from Mark Zuckerberg when they changed the company name from Facebook to Meta, but they also began introducing us to the concept of the Metaverse and really saying that it's experiential in a 4D world, virtual reality and augmented reality coming together. Do you see this as a positive shift in terms of customer experience online? What's your views?
If I'm honest, I don't fully understand what's happening there. I mean, somebody like you, I would be guided by you, and I would need to hear what's going on. What is it? What exactly are they doing? But overall, I'm a believer in social media. I'm a believer in the platforms. It's like everything else. There's a need for balance. We always need to watch the balance of it. So there's great good happens on Facebook without question. Like I've seen it from a local level. In my community, we raised 20,000 for floodlights about 3 years ago through Facebook in a couple of weeks, and there's nobody could tell me for a couple of years afterwards that that's not positive. It's, we were a GA club in West Donegal. No club in West Donegal had floodlights. We said, why not us? We should have the same as a club in a city centre. So the platform for it was online through Facebook. It wasn't writing letters to contractors over in the UK or ringing up friends. And it was instant and it was quick and it was cost effective. It cost us absolutely nothing. So whatever Mark Zuckerberg is doing, we will get positives from that, but there will also be negatives from it as well, because it's like anything that's new and has changed. If we overuse it, we're then abusing it. And therefore, the criticism sort of comes from that as well. So if we're over reliant on it, I see that's where the problem would be. But there's no doubt that whatever he's changing because his team and the data, the data will be suggesting that change is required for them as well. And one of the biggest digital players in the world, they will be working off that thing, disrupt or be disrupted. So they're getting in there before somebody comes in and does it to them, I would imagine. But again, I would need to sit down with you for half an hour for you to explain to me what under God he is doing.
Well, actually, episode 39 of the Public Sector Marketing Show is the top things that you need to know about Meta and the Metaverse. So that is coming very soon.
I will be tuning into that. I will have to. Yeah.
So finally, Charlie, what advice would you give to a marketing manager in government or public sector who are trying to transform their communications, level up digital, the online output, but they're trying to motivate management, up above them, and then staff around them who are a little bit nervous?
Okay, what I would say to any marketing team is that, again, I can only talk from my experience, my life experience, my work experience, and share that experience. I can't tell anyone what to do, but from experience, what I would suggest is that it's always internal. So marketing should also be internal. Going and telling the outside world that you're one thing and letting them come in and find out that that's not there is bad marketing. So all marketing, like all customer service, should start internally. How good is your internal marketing? How good is your internal communication? How good are you treating each other internally? Do a measurement of your culture in your public sector, either your council department or your public sector department or the entire organization. You can measure culture, you can measure internal customer service. And if you measure that and you find there's a deficit, work at that and then start your marketing campaign on the outside. Now that to me makes total sense, because that's what I've seen. I had a successful sort of 8 years at one stage in the UK in the pub industry, continuously winning these sales awards, wondering what is it I'm doing, because I hadn't been at university, I hadn't been at third level, I hadn't looked at the research. And the light bulb moment for me, I suppose, came when a guy asked me, what's your sales strategy? And I didn't even know what the word strategy meant, let alone that I had a sales strategy. But the sales strategy was, and the marketing strategy was, that I got it right internally. So internally, looking after the team, making sure the communication was clear, looking after their needs, not the customers' needs, not the citizens' needs as it is in the public sector, but looking after the team and getting the internal. This doesn't take a huge amount of work. This sometimes is tweaking. It's about the raising of awareness. So it doesn't mean that you can't start a marketing campaign for 3 years because you have this other work. It can be done parallel to it. So that would be, based on the experience I have and those companies that I'm working with that are now saying, you were absolutely right, that was the right way to do it. That's the only advice that I can pass on.
Charlie, I love listening to you. You are a wealth of knowledge, and how you share it is so endearing and so engaging. So we need to do something together. I know we've had long conversations about what that will be, but I just think there's so much value that you can give to my audience. And also, I just want to say, isn't it brilliant to have two Donegal people on one podcast and to give people that lovely accent for over 20 minutes?
Absolutely, and it's just good to and I think the thing has changed completely. 20 years ago we were sort of where are you based? You would whisper that there was Donegal, and now it's nearly like Donegal has become not only Donegal but any remote area down the west of Ireland. Working remotely and telling the story behind that is the sort of New York or London at the moment. So great to see you again, Joanne, and thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. And it just, when I hear the Donegal accent, it brings me home. I know I'm not too far from home, but it's just like a nice comfort blanket. So apart from that and all your wealth of knowledge, Charlie, a pleasure as always, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. Thank you.
Level up your social media skills by taking our diploma in social media, plus gain an industry qualification. Use the code SOCIALMEDIA20 for a 20% discount.
Visit publicsectormarketingpros.com.
If you haven't heard about it already, I'm going to remind you about our social media bootcamp kicking off in February 2022. This is your opportunity to refresh your social media skills, find out what's happening on the social networks, what has been changed, what has been updated, what is new, and what are the trends that are helping social media users get increased reach and engagement. It takes place over 5 consecutive weeks. Each of the workshops is 3 hours, and you'll get a mini social media plan for each of the social networks when you come along. So if you want to improve your social media skill set, find out what's trending right now, then make sure you check it out at publicsectormarketingpros.com. Almost 200 public sector pros have downloaded our current free ebook, and that is Mastering Marketing in the Public Sector, Out with the Old, In with the New, and learning how you can progress your career if you're interested in going up the career ladder. Also to say that if you want to learn from some of the best public sector marketing pros right across the world who have actually achieved it, in my view, and who continue to upgrade their digital comms, then we have 2 full days of sessions from the Public Sector Digital Marketing Summit. If you missed it, if you didn't attend live, you can now buy our on-demand ticket and you can absorb all of the amazing case studies, expertise, case notes, and also workshops from that event. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I'd love you to share it with a public sector pro that you know. And you can catch the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, or perhaps you're tuning in weekly on Facebook or on YouTube. But as always, it's a pleasure for me to show up every week and to share with you my insights and my knowledge, and to bring some amazing guests onto the show. But for now, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Public Sector Marketing Show. This episode has ended, but your digital journey can continue. Head over to publicsectormarketingpros.com to access resources and links mentioned in today's show, and to connect with Joanne and her team. Until the next time, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform.